Hey everyone, PK here, and I just wanted to start this episode by saying thank you, thank you, thank you for those of you who subscribe, who watch and listen to these episodes. When I started my podcast last year, I didn't realize what the uptake would be. I just thought it'd be a great idea to share in a different medium, and now there's more than 60, 70 reviews on iTunes. There's thousands of downloads, and I'm just so grateful that you've taken the time out of your day, out of your night to include me in your life. You know, sometimes I get these reviews saying that watching or listening to your episode is the highlight of my week. I think that's probably a little bit too much to say, but for those of you who do message me comments and messages like that, I'm truly, truly grateful. I don't take any of it for granted, so I truly want to thank you for that. And I hope that you're improving, enhancing, and increasing your property knowledge and financial wealth through these podcasts. In this episode, basically using my skills and experience from my time as an investment banker. As you guys know, I developed data methods which assisted me to safely invest in properties. So now my wife and I now own 9 resi and 2 commercial properties, which will hopefully increase this year. But that's it as of now. And in this episode, I use these data methods and basically property strategies to elaborate upon my own portfolio and will hopefully help you. So Tyrone Shum, who's the host of the #1 property podcast in Australia, it's called Property Investory, sits down with me in this show. He asked me about my upbringing, things like why I wanted a high-paying career, why I invested in property, how I invested in my first property, and the investment property that taught me the biggest lesson. So it's a little bit of a personal episode if you want to hear my journey and hopefully get a few, or more than a few, golden nuggets that you can apply into your own investing. Then listen through. It will hopefully change or enhance your views and your sophistication in investment property.
Do you want to achieve wealth and passive income through property investing? PK Gupta, host of Oz Property Investment Mastery, will help you achieve passive income by buying top 5% growth and positive cash flow property and building a portfolio using data without you wasting months of time doing research, spending weekends at inspections, or dropping $10,000 to $20,000 on buyer's agents each time. So if you are confused and overwhelmed by the amount of contradictory information available online and don't know where to start, then this show is for you.
With a background in economics, statistics, and finance, Gupta developed data methods which allowed him to confidently invest in properties. He's using those data methods to help others.
What I do is I help people build passive income through buying residential property here in Australia without using a buyer's agent.
To maintain a good work-life balance, Gupta uses his mornings for personal development, and in the afternoon, his workday begins.
From about 12 to 6, that's where I help my clients. So I provide a course and mentorship service. So I'm there answering their questions, there helping them choose the right suburbs, developing the right strategies, negotiating. I'm all in the background. They're doing it themselves, but I'm sort of just there as a sounding board, making sure they're doing the right thing.
Originally from India, Gupta's family made a big move to New Zealand when he was only 4 years old.
So I grew up basically in North Island all the way through to the last year of high school. Like anyone in New Zealand, played rugby and all that kind of thing. And we weren't terribly well off, I guess you could say. First generation immigrants. My parents did all the hard work, all the hard yards, kind of setting up the foundation and everything like that. My dad was an engineer and my mum was a machinist. Just what she had to do to kind of, for us to get by. I can remember that, where we moved to in the North Island, the population of that town, it's called Napier, it's in Hawke's Bay. The population was literally 50,000 people. And I think first generation immigrants, I was probably the only non-Kiwi, you could say, or non-New Zealander in that school. Or maybe there was one other sort of, I think it was Chinese person or something like that. So I think my earliest memories were, to be honest, really just trying to fit in.
To ensure that Gupta had a good education, his parents worked hard and saved to send him to a good school.
I just remember high school being almost like the best times of my life. I'd play sport. I was quite studious or academic. Like growing up in an Indian household, you either become an accountant or engineer or doctor or a failure, as they say. So not to kind of put too much negativity on my parents, but yeah, there were some expectations there. But I think my parents were really good as well because they wanted me to be all round. So I play rugby, I play soccer, I played tennis, I played cricket, all these things. And so, yeah, life was just jam packed. I remember my mum used to take me to 2 sports like trainings or events every single day, and then school in the middle, and then, learning piano, all these sorts of things on the side. So it was just life like life is today, like go, 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 but like full of fun, which is good.
When his high school education was coming to an end, his family moved to Australia for better opportunities.
And then when it came for me to finish high school, we decided to come over to Australia because my dad thought, there's better education, so to speak, in Australia. So that's when we moved over here, and I did my university at UQ in Brisbane. In the first year of university, I was working at a fruit shop, just trying to, make some money and have enough sort of extra money just to do things I wanted. But the second year is where things really got more serious. I was doing summer internships. I did one at Queensland Treasury Corporation. I did one at Macquarie Bank down in Sydney, spent the month or the summer months in Sydney between the second and third year of university. So that was really, I guess, the training ground to sort of build those relationships with future employers, show that I was keen. It kind of seems a little bit try hard to some extent, but that's kind of what you need to do. And I was super passionate about it at the time, actually. And I think, I was just really grateful to get those placements and show that, it's not all about the grades. In fact, I'll share with you a story, Tyrone. In the last subject that I did at university, this was the last subject that I just needed to pass, and I already had a grad role, lined up with JP Morgan from the internship the year before. And I thought I actually failed the last subject of university, and I was like literally almost crying. And I was like, I just had this amazing role at JP Morgan. There was like 1,000 applicants. They took 2 people, and now I failed my subject, and I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get the degree. And so I remember I called up the human resources people at JP Morgan saying, like, my voice was quivering. I was like, I know you've already sent me the contract. We've exchanged contracts. I'm starting in February, but like I've just failed my last my last exam. And what they said was like, even if you failed, we'll take you, because it's actually not about the grades at all for us. It's about your experience. It's about who you are. And you've demonstrated that through internships and things. So that was kind of like a relief. But the bigger relief was when they figured out that almost everyone failed the exam, so they bell curved it, and they basically passed everyone. So that was like a massive relief. I didn't deserve to pass that exam, but everyone passed anyway.
Influenced by his upbringing, Gupta was driven to have a high-paying career from a young age.
Initially, I wanted to become a doctor. It's kind of a bit cheesy to say, but, kind of like to help people in a way. But I remember, I think I was 12 or 13, and we migrated from like just general science subjects to actual chemistry and biology and things. And we had to cut up a rat or a hamster. I can't remember what it was. And it was just like the smell and the texture. It was just all too much for me. And I was just like, this is not working out. So then I was like, okay, I need to go into like more like commerce and mathematics and that kind of thing. And because we weren't super well off, I remember actually in sort of lunchtime at recess, sometimes I would use the school computer to just Google. Can't remember if it was Google or Yahoo or whatever back then, but I would be searching highest paid salaries because I wanted to like kind of fashion my subjects that I chose in high school to be the right ones. So I don't think most kids were doing that. They were just having fun, but that's what I was doing. And then consistently what would come up is this career choice called investment banking. And I don't really know what it was, but, there was movies like Wall Street Number One, like that was released in the 80s that, I'd seen. And I was like, this sounds okay. I mean, as long as it pays really good. So yeah, that was kind of my career choice all the way from age 13. And so I just really worked really hard and took the right subjects and everything to kind of do that.
After continuing to work hard, Gupta graduated from the University of Queensland. From there, he kicked off his career at JP Morgan.
Yeah, so this was my grad role. So this was a full-time permanent role, which I started in 2011. They had 3 new graduates start, and I was there for, I think, just over 12 months. I was working 90 hours a week. I couldn't see my girlfriend at all, really, like including weekends. And just the kind of, I mean, I'm very grateful for the opportunities given, for the contacts. I mean, I was talking to CEOs of ASX listed companies at 21 years of age, but there's just so much pressure. And sometimes pressure can make diamonds, but I think that kind of pressure just really turned me off. And I was like, yeah, I'm making 100K, but I think really this is a McDonald's wage if you consider how much I'm working, how hard I'm working. And I realized that my boss and their boss and their boss were actually working even harder than I was. Of course, they were making loads of money, but at some point, money doesn't actually matter. You actually just need your life. So yeah, 6 months into it, I was like, I don't think this is sustainable. And that's when I started thinking about other career choices, and I finally left after about a year.
At the time he left JP Morgan, Gupta did not have a big property portfolio and needed to work. This led him back to Brisbane.
I decided to join management consulting field, which is a bit like investment banking in the sense that you work for big companies, you solve their problems, but it's different where you're actually solving real problems, not just financial problems. So how do we improve productivity? How do we, create a new purpose or vision for this company? Et cetera, et cetera. So not only were the hours more manageable, more like, 60, 70 hours a week, the pay wasn't a huge pay cut, which, was tolerable. And that way I could actually then focus on, by that time, Tyrone, I'd sort of realized that I don't really want to work a 9 to 9 for the rest of my life or even for the next 20 years. So that's when I was sort of thinking, I need a job which will still stimulate me, which will still help me understand strategy, understand numbers. It will still give me all that exposure to climb the ladder, so to speak. But I can still have enough time to do what I really want to do on the side.
After roughly 5 years in this position, Gupta shifted his career to an in-house role.
So doing the same thing, strategy consulting, but then I worked for Virgin Australia as the manager or head of strategy. So similar thing, but just focusing on one client, which is where you worked. And I was there all the way till a few years ago, actually, which is when I decided to kind of do more property full time.
Now, to answer the question that we all want to know, why did Gupta start investing into property?
I was starting to understand more and more about the stock market, and my background was econometrics, statistics, finance. There was so much that goes into picking the right stock, analyzing, valuing, seeing what the future cash flows will be for a stock. And I realized that I didn't actually have the confidence to put my own money, like let's say $100,000, not that I had $100,000 by then, but $100,000 into a few stocks. I didn't have the confidence to do it for myself. I was advising superannuation funds and all these people, but that's someone else's money at the end of the day. And if it comes to my money, it's like, I don't really know. So I just don't like the volatility of the market, especially back then when, Europe was still a little bit uneasy post GFC. And I decided, well, there was no crypto at that time. I got to do something else. And property was really just the only other option. And it's not that I loved property or anything like that. It was just, here's a way I can actually get ahead and hopefully not work for the rest of my life. So that was really the genesis of it all.
After making the decision to invest in property, Gupta found no help in the usual resources of magazines and online. This is when he began to develop his own data methods.
I was my girlfriend at the time, now wife. We were researching for a long time. There was no Property Investory back then, unfortunately, or any podcast really. So mostly just real estate and magazines and stuff. And there was just so much information, and we went to some seminars and hotel rooms and stuff, and it just didn't vibe with us. So I sort of thought, I know data in the stock market. Hardly anyone is looking at sophisticated data in the property market. And so I just sort of compiled a lot of the data that I could. It costed a lot of money. It was a bit of an investment. And ran, statistical models, multivariate regressions, and really see what actually matters, what actually doesn't matter. Because I was sort of the opinion that if all you do is follow what Google says, which is buy close to a train station, close to a CBD, good amenities, infrastructure, if that was all there was to it, then like, why isn't everyone just driving around Ferraris and stuff, right? So I didn't buy that. And so I just used my own sort of data methods. I wasn't fully confident in it yet, but we'd back tested it and calibrated it. And I bought an East Gosford. So East Gosford is about an hour north of Sydney. It was a little bit longer back then because there's no tunnel and things. But we chose that. It was, what was the purchase price? Like $320 or $315, something like that. And I mean, it was something we could afford. We couldn't buy $500,000 properties. The rent was about $400, so it paid for itself. So that was really the first property, Tyrone.
Gupta and his wife now own 9 residential and 2 commercial properties. However, this does not mean they have not faced challenges on their path to success.
I think my biggest mistake, you could say, was in 2015. This was, I think, our fourth or fifth property at the time. We bought in Cairns. And, for once, what I did was I sort of ignored the local government area data. I ignored the suburb data, and I just said, look, Cairns hasn't moved for 10 years. The prices are the same as what they were pre-GFC. Tourism is booming. The Australian dollar is low. At that time, there was some tycoon from Hong Kong who was going to build a huge casino in the Esplanade in Cairns. And I was like, how can you go wrong? Like, let me just ignore the data and just follow these macroeconomic trends. Because that's kind of what you hear on news and stuff like that. And like, literally, that property was bought for about, I think, $400,000. And right now, like 6 years later, it's worth about $450,000. So, I mean, it wasn't like a huge mistake where I lost my money and I had to kind of, build everything back up. But I mean, the opportunity cost is hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that just sort of taught me the lesson that don't just go by what the media is saying. Don't just go by, there's a big infrastructure thing planned, because a lot of times these infrastructure projects, they fall over. They don't get funding. They don't get development approval. There's so many stages that they have to go through. And don't just follow and invest in the market because of macroeconomic trends. You have to be very scientific and actually really know, using data, the suburb, the local government area where you should invest.
Although this investment wasn't a huge mistake, it still taught Gupta some valuable lessons.
Yeah, I'm still scratching my head, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But then when you actually understand, it's like around the suburb where I bought, they've literally have built 1,000 new homes. So supply demand, didn't see it coming, didn't understand that at that time. You live and learn. All right, guys. Well, my name's PK, and I hope you got a ton of value out of this. Thanks so much, guys.